are now tuned in to the Storm Tracker podcast.
Welcome back, Canes family. It's the Storm Tracker podcast, back for another episode. I'm Marcus Benjamin, chilling with my guy Frank Tucker, representing the Crib, South Florida, and we're representing CanesCounty.com, part of the Rivals.com network. And we are currently running a promotion right now for new subscribers. Annual subscribers can get a 60% discount on your annual subscription by using the promo code Kickoff 2023. That is good until the 28th. So basically from now, Thursday, until the weekend is when you can jump on that promotion. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe this YouTube channel and podcast as well. And we're going to get into a lot of things here. We got a couple of 5-stars that are going to make their decision that Miami is in their top schools list. And it's the final week of fall camp until we actually go into game week, Frank. I'm excited about that. And then we saw some high school football. So we'll talk a little high school ball here as well. But let's start with Mario Cristobal and his comments this week. He got to speak to the media, and I put together basically what he said and what he meant piece on Canes County, and that's basically where I kind of give my take on, kind of like what he said versus what he meant. So you don't have to, if you don't want to kind of read through the entire transcription, then I kind of give an idea of, what he meant based on what he said. And one of the statements that kind of stood out for me is what he said about Damari Brown, the true freshman. He has been impressive during camp, and he's fighting for that starting position. It looks like, Frank. I think he has a legitimate chance to do so. But let's first kind of take a listen of what Cristobal had to say.
Get Big Brother mad now. You're not talking about the older brother. Damari, you saw the way we said it. Oh, you didn't see it. You guys know that side. Good. Go ahead. He's just a physical guy. Physical, fast, knows how to play football, understands the game. And where he played high school ball, that is high level training, right? I mean, they prepared those guys, and the hit rate there at Heritage is a very high hit rate, as well as all the other guys, from all the other schools that we recruit here locally. But he came in with a really strong knowledge of what we do in the secondary, and he doesn't flinch. This freshman class has, over a dozen guys that don't flinch. Like they're eager for the moment. They're not sitting back and waiting to inherit a job. They want to go win one in the right way, not in anything but a hard work kind of way. So it's been really fun to watch him develop, and he's going to play a tremendous role this year. He's fighting for a starting spot.
Mario.
Now, definitely the line that kind of jumped out to me is that he's fighting for a starting spot. Just your take, Frank, on his comments and just Damari Brown's chances of being a starter at some point.
Yeah, when everybody started freaking out about Cormani McClain not signing with Miami, ultimately, I wasn't too worried. I don't think you were too worried. People in South Florida weren't too worried because we knew what Damari Brown brought to the table. As a group, we thought he was one of the more underrated prospects nationally at the cornerback position, and he was a dominant player on the high school level. The only problem in his first 3 years was health. And he showed his senior year that when he is healthy, he is in the conversation for the best cornerback in the country. We saw him go up against the 5-star all-world receiver Jeremiah Smith, probably giving him his toughest battle in his high school career thus far. So we know how talented he is. It's not surprising to see him do so well. There's a reason that both Brown brothers are getting rave reviews. They have elite pedigree, as their dad was an NFL cornerback and a guy who played at the University of Miami. And they both have the size, skill, and aptitude coming from American heritage to understand the college schematics that come with being a Division I Power 5 football player. So it's not surprising. I do think it would be surprising to see Damari starting week 1. I know that he's competing for the job. I do think by midseason he has an opportunity to potentially take that job. But there's another heritage guy that's still in the boat. That's Daryl Porter Jr. You still got Corey Couch. Jaden Davis is going to play a versatile role. Jadias Richard. We know Demetrius Freeney is still pretty banged up, so I don't see him taking a starting job. But there's still some veteran guys there that have been on the college level and done a decent job. So I don't see him starting week 1. I would not be surprised to see him start week 2. And I think by week 3 or 4, he's eventually the guy for the job. But we've seen them slow play freshmen under Mario Cristobal, right? Like Nigel Kelly didn't come out the gates as a starter, but he was a guy that throughout the year got more and more playing time. Wesley Besaint last year was a guy that got more and more playing time. They're not into the thought process of rushing guys in there. So, there's very few guys that I think that week 1 are going to be starters. I think that's Ruben Bain, potentially, and Francis Mauanoa, because those are the two guys at positions where there's not a lot of depth, not a lot of elite talent at their positions. And despite Miami losing 2 guys to the NFL, I still think that they have a solid depth core at that cornerback spot moving forward.
Yeah, let's dive into this cornerback spot too, because we kind of spoke to all of the DBs or most of the DBs this week. They're available to the media to speak. And what I noticed is that just a bunch of Broward County guys. Frank, I know you're loving that, but it's just it's a Broward County room almost entirely, with the exception of Jadias Richard and Demetrius Freeney. Bunch of Broward guys there. Of course, you mentioned the Brown brothers, Daryl Porter Jr., Corey Couch as well, and Jaden Davis, all played their high school ball in Broward County at powerhouse high schools. Who do you think ends up getting this job, man? Because I think we can all kind of pencil in Devontae Brown as CB1, right?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I do think Daryl Porter still gets the first nod out the gate. Listen, we saw a long leash with guys like DJ Ivey and Tyreek Stevenson. We know Tyreek Stevenson wasn't all world, but he ended up being good enough to have a second round grade, some first round projections going into the NFL draft last year. So I think Daryl Porter's still going to get a shot. He might be on a short leash, but I think he's going to be the guy that we first see out there, just because this coaching staff does trust experience. You don't see a lot of freshmen, like I said, jumping in there at the beginning of the year starting. Despite Wesley Besaint being the best linebacker on the team last year, he didn't start right away. They slow played it. So I think that it's going to be Daryl Porter. He has really good experience. He was a star at West Virginia early on. When he did play last year, were there some struggles? Absolutely. We heard about the missed assignments in practice. It's part of the reason that he wasn't able to overtake DJ Ivey for the job. But he's added size. He's more of a physical fit at the position now. And he's done well, right? We've seen him be opportunistic. He's gotten interceptions in practice. He's gotten interceptions in scrimmages. He's gotten interceptions in the spring. Has he gotten taken over the top a few times? Absolutely. But even the best cornerbacks get beat. And I still think that he's going to be the guy through at least the first few games of the year.
Yeah, I agree. From what I'm hearing in camp, Daryl Porter is tearing it up, as well as Damari Brown. It's going to be interesting to see kind of how it all plays out during the season and for game number 1. So as far as the other news that kind of happened this week is Malachi Toney, the outstanding wide receiver from American Heritage, decides to commit super early in his process to the Miami Hurricanes. And what I'm going to ask you, Frank, and with a couple other questions is this a big deal or not a big deal that Malachi Toney has now committed to the Hurricanes 2026 prospect?
I think this is a big deal in a few different ways. One, you continue that pipeline to American Heritage that has grown so strong since Mario Cristobal has come back home. You just talked about Daryl Porter. We just talked about Damari Brown. You got James Williams in the program. You got Mark Fletcher in the program. Like, you have a plethora of elite talent that has come from American Heritage over the last few years. That looks to continue with guys like Byron Lewis, DeAndre Desanor, Greg Zay Thomas, who they offered at corner. Even Jermaine Dallas is a 2024 safety that they're keeping an eye on and offered. I don't think that he's a take right now, but he's a guy that they're interested in. And with a big season and a big stage, he could be another American Heritage product to end up at the University of Miami. So I think Malachi Toney ending up at Miami puts that pipeline even deeper into things. And the other aspect is they beat Ohio State out for this kid. He had a committable offer to Ohio State as a freshman. He is part of that South Florida Express program, right? He's close with Brandon Innes. He has a relationship with Carnell Tate. It's there with that Ohio State relationship, and still Miami was able to beat him out. And that's huge kudos to Kevin Beard, a Broward County native who has come in and shown the receivers in South Florida that you can stay home and to be successful. And he has shown the ability to be a mentor to these guys, because every time we talk to a receiver, the conversations aren't about football. Occasionally they'll talk about technique and tightening up a few things in their game, but overall, he is a mentor. He is a father figure in these guys' lives, that Unc type, figure in their lives. So I love the fact that they were able to get Malachi Toney this early. Yes. Is it extremely early? Yes. But we are starting to see that 2026 class start to commit. You mentioned in the message boards before Mally committed that those guys are starting to find their homes, right? Julian Lewis, who has potential to be the number one quarterback in the country, already committed to USC. I think that Calvin Russell is another guy that you could see at the University of Miami committed over the next year or so, just because of the legacy ties, his love for the program. He's already got an offer. They're recruiting him pretty heavily. There's a number of players in that class that Miami's after really hard, and I think that he's one of them. Also, the fact is, with this NIL age of college football, you're starting to see guys reclassify at least a year earlier a lot of times. So we might be looking at this like, oh, he's 3 years away from signing. He might only be 2, really, depending on how that high school career goes. And depending on how Miami continues to progress, he could be a guy that becomes a 2025 prospect instead of a 2026 and jumps in with Byron Lewis, DeAndre Desanor, Greg Zay Thomas, and in a very strong nucleus at American Heritage to go to Miami early. So, yes, this is a big deal. I know people want to poo-poo on it because he's a 2026 prospect, but if he was committing to Ohio State, everybody would be upset and say that Mario Cristobal missed. He did not in this case. They showed enough to lock him in, and I think this is a guy that can be a leader for Miami in recruiting over the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think this is a big deal, and what I think about is, what if Miami kind of jumped on Jeremiah Smith this early? What if they jumped on a Brandon Innes this early in their process, and what if they actually committed to Miami as early as Malachi did? Then I think they would probably have a better chance of landing those type of prospects. And I'm comparing him to those type of prospects because I do think very highly of Malachi Toney. I think he is going to be one of the best, if not the best, wide receiver in this class, which is loaded, like you said. You got a Jabari Brady, you got a Calvin Russell also in this class. So potential I mean, it's possible you might have 3 5-stars out of South Florida alone. So I think it's important for Miami to kind of lock down a player of his caliber. Speaking of another player that they're looking to lock down, and that's David Stone, the big defensive tackle out of IMG Academy, is going to make his commitment this Saturday, the 26th, and Miami is well in this race. Seems like it's a Miami-Oklahoma battle here to the end. He's originally from Oklahoma. And after, or during the game, rather, in his week 0 kickoff classic, after a big play that he made, David Stone throws up the U. Now, that had a lot of people talking because he shared it himself on his Twitter page. So is this a big deal or not a big deal, Frank, going into his decision on Saturday?
I think, of course, it's a big deal. It shows Miami is still in the race. We saw with Kamarion Franklin that Miami wasn't in the race that they thought they were, which was unfortunate. You know, we're starting to hear that he was committed to Ole Miss potentially as early as a week before he committed. So the fact that he's throwing up the U is a good thing. Like you said, this is a race between Oklahoma and Miami right now. I do not think Michigan State is in it any longer. I don't think that teams like Alabama are going to be able to get into the race. I don't think Ohio State's of the world are going to be able to get into the race. No Texas ties or anything like that, in my opinion. So I love where Miami's at here. He did post, a graphic or a picture of him in Sooner gear saying "Boomer Sooner." So that's a little bit of a red. Yeah, it's a little bit of a red flag there. I think he is enjoying his process right now, and he is a guy that knows how to utilize social media to the benefit of his recruitment. So it's not too much of a big deal. But it is a big deal because you want to stay in the race. You want to stay relevant to, what the prospect is doing publicly, right? Because if Miami's enough on his mind to be thrown up in the middle of his first game and not an O, right? That means that who knows? Maybe there's some foreshadowing there. I think that he doesn't even know where he's going to commit just yet. I know that the commitment is just a few days away, but much like Zaquan Patterson, who I'm sure we're going to talk about in a few, he's a guy that loves Miami, but he also loves home. So I don't think a decision has been made. I think it'll be made maybe the day before or even the day of with David Stone, because we have seen how that recruitment has gone. Our guy, John Garcia, has been up to date with that just because of his ties to IMG Academy. And sure. I think Miami has a really good shot here. And if they can win out on 2 5-stars on Saturday, watch out on the potential of what this class becomes.
I'm kind of like on the fence if this is a big deal or not, him throwing up the U, because we've seen players troll before, right? Where they kind of show that they're interested in a certain school, but they end up committing to another. We saw that with Colin Simmons recently, and others, kind of along the way, especially this year, it seems. And so I don't think it's so much of a big deal that he's throwing up the U. I think it's probably more of a concern that he posted that Boomer Sooner graphic immediately following that. That's a concern for me. And Miami, they're sitting at just Dalen Russell, I believe, as their only defensive tackle.
Artavius Jones too,
and Artavius Jones. Sorry, he's an outstanding talent, which I'm sure is going to be bumped up in ratings soon. But they could use another guy, and this is the type of guy that would really kind of take this class to another level. So we'll see how it all plays out. It should be very interesting, but I'm kind of leaning on the side of him throwing up the U as not a big deal at this point. And I will be talking with John Garcia tomorrow to get his opinion on things on David Stone as well as Zaquan Patterson, which brings me to the 5-star from Chaminade Madonna will also make his decision Saturday. And this is a recruitment that's gone, all over the place, especially as of late. I think you and I kind of thought it was a Michigan-Miami race just basically a month ago in July when we saw him at the Tutu Atwell 7-on-7 tournament. And now Florida State has firmly kind of jumped in the mix, and many say that Florida State is leading in this race right now. But there's a lot of chatter amongst Florida State fans, reporters. Is all that chatter surrounding Zaquan Patterson a big deal going into his commitment on Saturday?
Listen, is Florida State in it? Absolutely. Do they have a shot? Absolutely. Mike Norvell has taken the reins on this recruitment, and he's personally – both Miami and Florida State are taking the approach of director of recruiting and head coach hand-in-hand recruiting Zaquan Patterson. The issue here is with Florida State that I do not think that the defensive coordinator and defensive back coach, which is a former American Heritage head coach Pat Surtain, are not doing that great of a job recruiting Zaquan Patterson. So I do like where Miami's at. I think that it's very premature for people to say that Florida State has jumped in front in this race, because I don't think the kid has decided on where he wants to go. I know people want to act like, they have a knowledge of where he's decided already. He has not. He is not informing any of the schools where he's going to go before he commits. That's just how it's going to be. So nobody knows anything as of yet. I think that Miami has a really good shot of landing him. He does love the idea of being at home. Miami has always been the school that he has been firmly attached to throughout his process. Even when it was Georgia, right, Miami was in the race. When it was Michigan, right, who was thought to be in front, Miami was still in the race. Now it's Florida State. Everybody, I feel like, outside of Zaquan Patterson is trying to pigeonhole him somewhere else, while Zaquan Patterson is still eyeing Miami. There's a good relationship built there with Mario Cristobal and Zaquan. Dennis Smith has done an excellent job of jumping into this recruitment and kind of leading things in a lot of different ways. And I love where Miami's at here. The fact that Michigan is not as much in the race is huge for me. I still think that they got a shot, but I don't think that they're as close as they were prior. Like you said, a month ago, we thought Michigan could be the team. They are not the team any longer. And I still feel the same way about Florida State. For me, it's still Miami. There's just too many ties to the program. Him and James Williams have a prior relationship because of their ties to the DEFCON 7-on-7 program. He knows a number of players on the Miami team just because there's so many South Florida products in the program, especially guys like Mark Fletcher, who he raved about as the best player he has ever played against, which is something I think that he's going to respect that Mark made that decision. Ruben Bain is another guy he has a ton of respect for. And also he spoke about the opportunity to play very early in his college career as being a factor in where he's going to choose to go. And Miami, in my eyes, is the best opportunity for him to see the field as a true freshman. If Cam Kinchins and James Williams exit this program via the NFL draft this year, or James Williams struggles once again, there's going to be major opportunity at Miami at the safety position, especially with his versatility and his athletic profile to be able to play either safety spot. So at Florida State, you have KJ Bolden committed. You have Conrad Hussey already in the building. And we know that Florida State has a tendency to hit that transfer portal very, very hard and promise starting spots. Majority of their starters are guys that are from the transfer portal. I know it's been blasted everywhere on social media, their lack of success in recruiting and developing their guys. So once again, I do like where Miami is at, and I'm going to keep my future cast for Miami for the time being.
That's certainly good news to Hurricanes fans, but I do think this is a big deal. As far as the FSU banter or smoke, as you could say, because Miami didn't do well on the field last season, and I think that is what's playing a factor here with these recruits, because obviously FSU is doing pretty well in recruiting. They're ahead of Miami in the 2024 rankings, and I think the reason why they're able to get some 5 stars to their class is because of their success and what their projected success is supposed to be this season. So I think if Miami, was looked a little bit better on the field last year, I think this is not even a question at this point. But I think, just the success that Florida State has had, the fact that they're going into the season ranked, a lot of experts are picking them to win the conference. It seems, to some, that they're on a higher trajectory than Miami. So I do think it's a big deal, and I do think this is going to be a close race going into Saturday. But I still like Miami's chances, even if he ends up picking FSU. I think Miami still has a good chance of possibly flipping him before signing day. So we'll see what happens, man. It should be very interesting Saturday to see where both Stone and Patterson commits. But we did get a chance to see some high school football last week. I know you were at the Northwestern Chaminade game, where we did see Josiah Trader score a touchdown. What was your take on him and just the game overall?
My take is that Chaminade is a well-oiled machine, and they are going to be a tough play for pretty much anybody nationally this year. They came out and put a running clock on Northwestern, which is a perennial power in South Florida. They might be younger this year, but they still have a ton of Division I talent all over the field. And this was 35-0 before the first half completed. Could have been 42-0 if Chaminade really wanted to push the issue. But Josiah Trader, just to talk about him as the lone Miami commit in this game, every opportunity he had to get the ball, he did something with it. First catch was a first down catch where he broke a tackle, looked really good, showed a lot of energy after the catch, where I think this is a big year for him. I know some people, across multiple platforms have questioned his 5-star status, and I think that he's out to prove that he's that guy at that athlete spot. So loved what I saw from him. The route running was really solid. There wasn't a lot of offensive plays for Chaminade just because they would score so quick, and then they also scored on defense. So, his 2 targets turned into catches, including a touchdown that you just showed. Jeremiah Smith showed he is Jeremiah Smith once again, had like a 70-yard touchdown catch where he just took a Vanderbilt commit as deep can go. No, I'm sorry. That was Cox, who was actually a Chaminade guy, was chirping at him a little bit before the game. And he's got NFL pedigree. So he did that against a kid who was a Division I cornerback in the 2025 class. He made some big time plays in that game, had a beautiful back shoulder catch that had everybody going, which probably would have been a score if he gets off that cornerback after the catch. And then I loved what I saw from CJ Bailey. I still wish Miami would take him as a second quarterback in this class to compete with Judd Anderson, 2 high potential guys, with CJ being that local guy that could really solidify things for Miami. And Davion Gowes looked really good too, showed some burst, scored a goal line touchdown. And they have some really good young talent, including Trig Lewis, who is a 4-star prospect, and Kyle Washington, who scored a touchdown and is a top 250 player in the country. Those are 2 guys to watch if you guys are Miami fans, because I do think they're going to get that Miami interest before it's all said and done. Defensively, Zaquan Patterson scores a pick 6, which I think is huge for his film. A lot of people question his position at the next level. Is he going to be an outside linebacker? Does he have to be an overhang player? he showed he has the requisite ball skills to be a true defensive back at the college level and then make something happen after the catch. He absolutely mushes his guy into the ground and takes it for a score, which was really impressive. So love what Chaminade Madonna has going on. I think that Northwestern still has some guys that are going to be really good. Nicholas Lanier, 2027 prospect with a Miami offer already, showed some positional versatility by almost knocking CJ Bailey out at safety on a quarterback run, and also making some plays at receiver as well. Calvin Russell had a nice catch for like 20-something yards. Adrian Posse actually looked good. I don't think that Miami ends up taking him at quarterback, but he looks like he's going to be a nice get for UAB, a high potential guy at the quarterback position. So it was an entertaining game nonetheless, and a lot of talent on the field.
Did JoJo play any DB out there?
Nah, didn't need to. They had, Chris Ewald showed that he wasn't just a corner guy. He was locking stuff down. I think he had a couple PBUs and also a major hit on their Division I running back, Tarvell Mathis, who has like 10 offers already in that 2026 class. So I loved the growth that I saw from CJ Ewald. He looks closer to that 6'1" height now and has added some mass to his frame. And he actually used to be a very much a big hitter, and it looks like he's gotten back to that because he was coming up and making some plays in the run game as well as some short area throws where he was showing that he wants to tackle. He's not a prima donna at that cornerback position at all.
Awesome. I do want to share just kind of what I saw at the Norland Ely game. I mean, not, you got some players that Miami are interested in, but I do want to say, Frank, this is probably the best Norland team I've seen in a long, long time. I mean, the players that they have, they look like this is no knock to Norland at all, but they look like Miami Central, right? We're used to seeing Miami Central have several guys, D1 guys on that defense, and that's what Norland is right now. Just a bunch of great players on defense with the Lumen twins and now Jamari Howard at corner. I was just really impressed with their pursuit to the football. Jeremiah Marshallin, the pick commit looked great as well. And on offense, that they just look really dynamic. EJ Yapur, 3-star, now could be upgraded to a 4-star if he continues his great play. He was just showing what he can do. He seems almost equally as dangerous on the ground and in the air, which is saying a lot because he is a tremendous passer. And he just really move the offense with efficiency. I really like Chino Rodriguez as a running back here. This guy from Miami Beach, he is committed to Bethune, and he's a guy that I think is really underrated. I think this kid is really going to have a breakout year, especially with this offense. And the fact that they got some receivers on the outside that can make plays, and Isaiah Scott and Jade Card as well. Jade Card has a Miami offer, scored a touchdown in this game. This game was really not close. It was 35-7 at half. And the reason why Ely got the 7 is because there was a fumble on an exchange inside their own red zone, which led to a touchdown pass to Marcel Williams, who I really like as well. So this game could have gotten worse. It was cut short due to a lightning delay, but I'm almost to the point, Frank, where I want to pick Norland to win states. That's how good they looked to me. Haven't seen Central in person yet, and this is, to me, the SEC of districts, especially in South Florida with the teams that are in it. So it's going to be tough just even to get out of this district. But I was just really, really impressed with what I've seen from Norland. They look like a well-oiled machine. And this week, Frank, we got some really great matchups. It's Broward County versus the World. We mentioned Broward County earlier in this podcast with all the DBs that are on the Miami squad. And now it's going to be Broward County versus the world. They're doing this again for the second year in a row. Last year, they nearly went undefeated. I think they lost one game.
Stranahan, too.
The only team to lose a game against the world. And when I say the world, it's the top programs, some of the top programs in the entire country. And I think the level of competition has gotten even, I think, better this season. Probably will be even higher next season because I'm hearing Mater Dade is going to be part of the mix next year. So which matchup are you most excited about here? First, let me just say we have a chance to see Miami commit Luke Nickel in action against one of the top teams in South Florida and Western. So your take on that game, first off.
Well, this is my home school. This is a place I coached at. This is a place I played at. This is my alma mater that Luke Nickel is going up against. So I'm excited for this matchup.
There's no bias, though, right?
There's no bias. I think two teams are very equal to each other. As a matter of fact, trenches aren't great on either side. Really good skill position play. Luke Nickel has put on a show through scrimmage and kickoff classic thus far in 2023. He looks like he has the potential to be one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the class overall. DeBron Gatling, Texas A&M commit, is one of the best receivers in the country, and he's going to be the matchup to watch tonight. Him and Kobe Howard provide a truly elite matchup on either side of the field. I did. Luke Nickel. Listen, I know that there were some people that were speculative of who Miami added with Luke Nickel. He's one of the best players in the country, regardless of position. He has mobility. He had over 200 yards rushing last year. He can make every single throw on the field. He is a next-level quarterback, and he's one of the best quarterback prospects Miami has had committed to the program in years, right? The same way we talked about Tyler Van Dyke, the same way we talked about guys like Brad Kaya. He fits that mold. And, I love what Miami has in Emory Williams. He's shown a lot of potential since he's gotten on campus, but this could be the future of the program, in my opinion. He is that type of player. There you go. He's showing the wheels a little bit right there, the physicality after contact. I think he's going to be a really good player, and I think that Western could have some trouble tonight, but they have a really good defense. They have 3 Power 5 linebackers, a defensive backfield full of Division I kids. So I think this is going to be one of the best games of the weekend. No bias at all. I think it's great that it's starting off the weekend with this game. But some other games I'm excited about. That St. John Bosco, St. Thomas game is going to be a battle of 2 really good defenses against really good run games. Power rushing attacks. Cam Jones is a massive back for St. John Bosco. That's one of the top running backs in the country. You got a duo of Jordan Lyle, who's committed to Ohio State, and Stacey Gage, who's committed to UCF, to go with Chance Robinson and James Madison, who is a Missouri commit, one of the top 25 receivers in the country, a guy who could play tight end at the next level as well. So I think that's going to be a really good one. American Heritage plays St. John's. So those are 2 teams that are really talented. Shaman Amadana plays St. Francis on Saturday. So we're going to see that offense going up against a really talented St. Francis defense that features Blake Woodby. If he don't want to mess his name up, but he is, an Oregon commit, 4-star type corner. And they have a number of other guys as well. So, and it's going to be our chance to see Michael Van Buren in person, who's an Oregon commit and a one-time Miami target. He's a guy that I loved for Miami to end up in the class. Unfortunately, they went a different direction, and Judd Anderson, but it's going to be cool to see him in South Florida, and I think those are 2 of the best teams in the country going at it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited to see the Miami commits in these games. I'm excited to see Luke Nickel. Miami is interested in their tight end as well, Gia. So I'm excited to see him. Also, Saturday is going to just be a action-packed day. Bring your sunscreen, Frank, because it's going to be a scorcher, I'm sure. Just to see JoJo, of course, we've seen him a lot, but just to see him against top competition, of course, JJ as well. Still, of course, Miami target. as well as, of course, Zaquan Patterson, who we spoke about earlier. And then
will be committing. He'll be committing during the game. So
right,
that's going to
exactly.
be.
Is he confirmed during the game, before the game, or?
I believe at halftime he's going to be committing.
Okay, which is going to be televised on ESPN, by the way. The first two games, Chaminade Madonna against St. Francis, will be televised on ESPN, as well as the St. Thomas versus St. John Bosco game. And interested to see OJ Frederic. This is a kid that I just really love this kid, and I think he is going to show the world just how great he is and how much of a great find that Miami got in him. And then Chance Robinson kind of will want to see him make some plays, of course, and then Ryan Mack as well. Let's not forget he is also committed to the class, to see him in action. And then in that final game, we get to see now commit Malachi Toney, really kind of see if he can do an encore of what he did last year in this showcase. So really excited for the week. And with that, I am going to go into your rankings, Frank. Now, it seems like last week we were talking about your rankings, and you had both Chaminade and Central at the top. And I was like, okay, well, I've seen CJ Bailey, so I'm going to go with Chaminade. And now things have kind of shifted a little bit, right? So what? Tell me a little bit about pulling them up on the screen now. So you got,
so we got Chaminade number one. Chaminade has established themselves as the top team in South Florida, in my opinion, as of right now. Right, this weekend's going to be a huge test for them, and then obviously Central's got Bishop Gorman next week in Vegas. So just two major games for both teams. But Chaminade put a running clock on a really good Northwestern team, in my opinion. And Central struggled a little bit with the 3-quarterback system against Vanguard, who features Fred Gaskin at quarterback. They're a good team, but 13-6 comparative to 35-6 in a blowout. You got to kind of weigh those things when you're doing rankings. I still think it's close between those two things, but I would love to see those two go into week 5 undefeated. I still think we have a chance at that. And that'll be really the telltale on who's going to end up number one, in my opinion, because I think both teams are the favorites, despite your opinion on where Norland is at right now, to win their respective state championships in the 1M and 2M classifications in the state of Florida. 2 through 9, 3 through 9 pretty much stayed the same. Where we start to see some change is Coconut Creek jumps into the top 10. They put a running clock on Monarch.
I was a little surprised at that score. I'm not surprised that you moved them up. I was surprised at that score to put a running clock on Monarch, who is supposed to be, one of those teams. It's actually one of the teams that will be featured in this Broward County versus the World Showcase. That was an eye opener, bro.
Yeah, so I Coconut Creek is a team to watch. They're my dark horse for this season in South Florida, as a team that could spoil some seasons. And I think that they're going to be very, very good this year. Monarch is not a bad team, and they absolutely put it on them in the first half. This game only played a half, and still they were able to just kind of dismantle a team that had multiple 4-stars, right? A Division I quarterback, right? Some Division I prospects on defense, and still it just wasn't even close. Gibbons drops a spot. They tied with Plantation 45-45. Obviously, they showed that they can score some points, but they're going to have to show that they can play some defense, because they're in this showcase as well. They're also playing Cardinal Gibbons from North Carolina. Right. I love the matchup there, from the namesake. But
kind of like Miami versus Miami, game 1.
Miami versus Miami, yes. So Cardinal Gibbons, I think they win this game, and I think that they get back on the winning track. But we'll see. Miramar put it on Uncle Luke and Edison 21-0 as the first game of the Kickoff Classics last week in South Florida, which was a really surprising result because Edison has added some really good talent, including Jet White, a top 15 corner who's a Miami target in that 2025 class. So like what I'm seeing from Miramar, the West drops a little bit. Obviously, you get a running clock put on you. Things change. Ely and Monarch fall out of the rankings, and Palmetto and Plantation make an appearance. Plantation tying is like kissing your sister, but it's a good feeling for Plantation going against the Cardinal Gibbons team that is a perennial state championship contender. And I think that they're good enough to be in the top 15. They got a really good squad. They got some good players. And I think they're going to have a good year. Steve Davis does it annually. He was the coach that won a state championship with Ely when Tyrone Moss was there. So he's been doing it for some time now. And Palmetto, loaded with talent. They play a Homestead team this weekend in Homestead that is loaded with talent as well. It's going to be a really good one. It's a rivalry game. Ja'Cory Barney is going to be on full display. He actually played some quarterback last week, and I think he threw 2 touchdowns. So he is the ultimate athlete. Love his game. I would love to see Miami still flip him. We spoke to him a few weeks ago, and he told us that Miami's still nipping at his heels. So I love the fact that Miami's still on him, and I still think there's a chance that he can end up in the class because when Miami did jump on him, there was that mutual interest. So a couple other guys watching that game, Davion Dixon, Notre Dame commit. You got Cortez Mills, who's a top 100 prospect in the country. James Randall is an intriguing guy for me with the Power 5 level because he could be open to playing cornerback. And at 6'1" with his long arms and ball skills, he has the chance to be a guy that transitions to the defensive side of the ball and could be a really good player for somebody. I know he's considered a receiver and was like 1,100 yards last year for Daytona Mainland, but would love to see him at the defensive side of the ball next year. Guy to watch with Miami. And yes, Norland, I want to touch on that. They absolutely put it on Ely. I wanted to move them up with the rankings, but Homestead was able to knock off Isaiah Thomas in Clearwater Academy last week, 23-21. So everything kind of stays put. Big weekend here because Norland plays Lakeland. And we know that South Florida kind of struggles with Lakeland because they typically don't play the best. But when they do play St. Thomas, they seem to have their number. Let's see if they have Norland's number because Norland is coming and they're trying to make a statement as they push for that 2M state title run. Got to watch in that game for me, Larry Tarver, Maryland commit corner. He is one of the best in the country. He is an underrated guy, very much of the mold, like a Damari Brown. And I do not think he ends up at Maryland. Watch for him with some Miami interest moving forward.
Like Tarver, he actually got an interception in the game against Ely. Outstanding talent. I just kind of want to say the issues I have with this list. I don't have any issues with the top 5. I think the top 5 should definitely be that. And, as far as 6, 7, and 8, and 9 and 10, I don't have any issues with that either. It's where the 11 through 15 is where, there's some wiggle room, I guess you could say. Now, when I think about the West, right, and they got, running clock put on them, but Chaminade is arguably one of the best. Not arguably, they are one of the best teams in the entire country. In every major poll, they're in the top 10 at least. So I would push the West to be a little bit higher here. To maybe over Miramar, maybe over Gibbons. That's kind of like the only place I would maybe make some moves. And then Plantation and Gibbons, they literally played, and it was a tie. So why is Plantation 15 and why is Gibbons 11? So those are the only issues for me.
So for the Gibbons game, right, I got to give Plantation credit for tying. But they were up 31-13 in this game and choked. So I got to give Cardinal Gibbons some credit. Maybe they started off the season slow just because it is a kickoff classic, working some kinks out. They do have some young guys playing. So I want to see how the season plays out before I make that drastic move between those two teams. And the West has a huge, huge test this weekend with Vero Beach, who's led by SMU quarterback commit Tyler Aronson. Who was one time a Miami target. So I think if they are able to win this weekend, that's going to give us an idea of what the West season is going to look like because they got a tough slate. They play Venice, they play Central, they play Boca T, they play Norland. Like it's a loaded group. Play Columbus. It could be an ugly season for the West if they can't get on track against Vero. So right now I'm going to leave them at 13 just because I wanted to keep them in the rankings, and I think that they should be ahead of the two teams that I put in late in the process. If they win against Vero, they probably go back up into the top 10. If they lose to Vero, they probably drop out of the rankings because you can't start off 0-2 even if one of the games don't count. And I think that they got to show something because they showed absolutely no pulse last week. And I know you said it's Kickoff Classic and Chaminade is very good, but at the end of the day, if it was 70-0, which is what it looked like it was going to be, that would have been a detriment to everything Northwestern was trying to do.
I hear you 100%. I do have to say that, it was a very scary situation with the Booker T and American Heritage game. Tim Burrows, outstanding player that we've, been watching for a few years now, had a scare on the field. From what I hear, he is okay. So I'm very thankful to kind of hear that. But, just wanted to, let the audience know that, we're thinking about him and hopefully that he's fully recovered and he can be on the field and be okay. I know you were there, Frank, when it all happened. But, I just wanted to mention that since, they're obviously on the list here.
Yeah, unfortunately that situation happened. Tim is one of the best interior defensive linemen in South Florida and one of the best kids in South Florida as well. There's a reason he was getting Ivy League offers because of what he brings off the field. And he was committed to my Dade versus Broward game. So, I had it was a little bit closer to home for me than a lot of people. And, I hope he gets better. And even if football is not the path for him, I think he's going to be successful in anything that he does. So I'm glad to see him okay and stable. It was a very scary sight on the field. And unfortunately, we didn't get to see what was supposed to be a really good game between Heritage and Booker T. Game got canceled pretty early on. Didn't even hit the second quarter. So, we'll see what Heritage brings to the table this week against St. John's, and we'll see Booker T against the Killian team that I think that they're going to absolutely put it to.
Absolutely. Before we head out here, do you want to give any predictions on these games? Just for the top 4 games involving Miami commits here. The first, I'll ask you, Western and
Western close. Western close.
Okay.
Western close. I'm excited for this game tonight. As soon as we get off here, you and I are going to get ready, and we're probably going to start heading out there.
Sure.
And then I think it's going to be a good one. I think it's going to come down to the fourth quarter, who can control the trenches and who can control the elite players on the outside, which is Kobe Howard and DeBron Gatling. There's some really good complementary players on both sides of the field, but to the show, it is number 1 on Milton and number 2 on Western. Both quarterbacks are really good players. Dobby Belford's committed to Virginia Tech. Obviously, Luke is committed to Miami, so I think they're both going to have really good games. We'll see how these two defenses respond. For St. Thomas, I got St. Thomas winning close. We put our spreads out this week, and I put St. Thomas by 3. That was more of a pick 'em for me. I did Vegas style. I gave 3 points to the home team, but I'm going St. Thomas in a pick 'em. American Heritage, I got them winning, and I have Chaminade Madonna taking it against St. Francis so that they get their first nationally ranked win of the year, heading into a very tough early part of their schedule and continuing the path to that matchup against Miami Central in Week 5 that we have wanted to see for so long.
Absolutely. I am going to agree with all of your picks here. No homerism at all coming from the Crib, South Florida, or Canes County. But that is going to wrap it up for the Storm Tracker podcast. Like I said, make sure you subscribe this weekend for 60% off your first annual subscription to canescounty.com. This offer is good until 8/28, which is Monday. So definitely subscribe to the website. Lots of great stuff coming your way, especially with the football season coming up. And also make sure you subscribe, like, and share this channel and podcast. And that's it. That's all she wrote. And we'll catch you on the next episode of the Storm Tracker podcast.